How's everybody? We're back with another favorite, German chocolate cake. Now, this time we're putting a little twist on it, something you may like, you may not like, who knows. Let me know in the comments if you like it in my rendition of German chocolate cake and what you would do differently. In the meanwhile, we've got our ingredients already laid out and we're ready to go, so let's get started. So let's get started with our ingredient list. You see here we have our flour, cocoa powder, sugar, baking soda, vegetable oil, espresso powder, buttermilk, etc. laid out. But first we got to get our pan ready. We're starting with Baker's Joy. Everybody knows who's ever watched this channel that I love Baker's Joy, because it's so simple. It skips a step. We know our grandmothers and mothers, they would use flour and butter combination. Well, this is it right here. It's both all together. Once you get it in every nook and cranny, and as you can see, I even spread it around the rim a little bit just in case. I mean, I don't anticipate it overflowing, but just in case it does, we don't leave anything to chance. So now we're going to get started with our ingredients. We're going to start with our flour first. I used a combination of cake flour and all-purpose flour, not for any particular reason other than that's just what I had on hand. I wanted to I had this cake flour in my pantry for a while, just want to get rid of it. So we sifted it in. Now normally I would have sifted all my dry ingredients together. I don't know why I didn't do it this time, but whatever the case, however you want to do it, and it works for you. You want to make sure to get all of those lumps out, especially with this next ingredient, our cocoa powder. You know how you have in the bottom of your cocoa powder, it just have all of these rocks in there. It's like hard pebbles. You want to get that out of there. So sifting it as fine as possible and as much as possible, because you don't want to lose any of the ingredient at all. As you can see, those pebbles and settled to the bottom. I just stuck my hand in there and mashed them straight down through the sifter to make sure I got everything in there. Yeah, it took a little minute. Okay. Our next ingredient is sugar. Don't ask me why. I just was in the zone and I poured the sugar right in the sifter. You don't need to sift your sugar. Now we're going to add in our espresso powder, our baking soda, baking powder, and a little bit of salt as well. Just going to add it all in together. And as you can see, I've got the measurements on the screen, and I'll also link the recipe in the description in case it's moving too fast. But you can always pause when you need to. That's how I do. So we just take our whisk and mix everything together. That's one thing I like about making a chocolate or a German chocolate cake. I very rarely bring out my KitchenAid. I do mix everything by hand, and it comes together really easily. Now I learned something in making this cake. I wondered myself what the difference between a German chocolate and a chocolate cake was. We'll talk about that in a little minute. So now we're going to mix our wet ingredients together. We're going to start with our oil. Now, most people will tell you in making a cake, a chocolate cake, you want to stick with a flavorless or a canola or vegetable, but I don't like nothing flavorless. I don't know why anybody would want anything flavorless in their food, period. So if you want to use an evil, an extra virgin olive oil, something that's got some flavor, go ahead, knock yourself out. Be my guest. Alright, now we're adding 2 eggs to that. Excuse me. And this is some buttermilk that I set it out to let it get to room temperature. I let it stay out too long. But in my baking, it's something like cream or milk or buttermilk spoils. I still use it, and it really takes your cake to another level. It won't like make you sick or anything like that. I'm sorry, that was sour cream before. This is now my buttermilk here. I got a little ahead of myself, forgive me. I'm going to add a splash of vanilla as well. I really never measure out my vanilla. I just put as much as I feel like I want to have in there. Some people will say, oh, just use a couple of teaspoons. I just pour it until it feels good. That's how I like to do it. All right, so now we're combining all of our wet ingredients. You can just whisk it. Once you you break those egg yolks, it'll come together pretty easily. No need to overmix anything. You know, it's pretty simple. After you've gotten all of that combined, you're gonna come in this bowl, your wet ingredients, that is. Then you're gonna add them to your dry ingredients, as you can see here. So some people like to make like a little well in the middle of the dry ingredients and pour the wet into that. That's fine if that's what you want to do. I just poured it on top of there, and it's going to combine just as easily. And I always keep my rubber spatula on, so I make sure I don't miss any ingredients. I like to get everything out of there, and that cuts down on waste. But back to what we were saying about the German chocolate cake. This German chocolate was invented by a guy named Samuel German. It's not from the country German, and that's hot coffee I'm pouring in there now. Coffee, as we know, coffee or espresso powder intensifies the flavor of chocolate. It doesn't make it taste like coffee. We've talked about that before in some of my other videos. But this guy Samuel German, he invented this chocolate, and he said, what I'm going to do, instead of having, bitter chocolate, I'm going to add the sugar to the chocolate. So that could be a step that bakers can skip later on. So the chocolate was named after him, German. And that's simply the difference between a German chocolate cake and a chocolate cake. But recipes change and they adapt especially over decades, and no less more, a century or more. But that's just the difference between, it was invented by a guy named Samuel German. It was the type of chocolate that he invented, not the type of cake. All right, so as you can see, hand mixing this, it came together very easily, very quickly. You got a beautiful, rich, smooth batter. It's gonna make a couple of, I made 2 layers out of this, but you could make probably 3 thinner layers. That just depends on you. I used an 8-inch pan when I was baking this. So it depends on your preference, or you can cut your layers in half, however you want to do. I just made 2 layers. And here's why I measured them out, because if you're baking a cake to sell to someone, sometimes people can be kind of finicky. So they want to see even layers. And I find that about 500 grams per pan will get you where you need to go as far as having nice even layers. And then if you have, after 500 grams each, if you have anything left over, then you can, kind of eyeball it from there. But that's just if you want to be, really precise. Other than that, I don't see any problem with just straight up eyeballing it. Pour it in there as what your usually eye test. But for those who like to sell their product, or who have a small business, or however the case may be, and you want to be very particular, I suggest using a food scale and measure your batter out. Okay, as you can see, just that quick and easy. These are already ready to go into the oven. We're gonna let it bake for a little less than half an hour. Now I'm gonna tell you what I did differently. I had a friend who would bake me German chocolate cake, and she always put fresh cut strawberries on the top. Well, I decided to make a strawberry filling and put it on the inside, in between my layers of cake. And I'll link the recipe in the description. This is a little bit different from a German chocolate cake I made from another friend. I just put the berries on top. This was an anniversary cake for them. So I hope y'all enjoy this. Tell me how you would do it differently. And please, no matter what you do, keep baking.